Okay, everyone, I think we'll get started. Again, welcome to the technology workshop on the VizEx View HTML5 viewer. Before we get into the body, the meat of our presentation, this is the rules, housekeeping rules we're going to use for this webinar today. Our moderator, Dave, is going to be muting and unmuting of the delegates for the Q&A period, so it's going to be supervised by our moderator. We'll actually take live questions in the Q&A, and but if you would use the control, raise your hand, click on a little hand symbol there to raise your hand so we know who's asking the question and that you do have a question. Or as an alternative, you can also post a question in the questions panel over there in your control panel. There are some handouts that we've got that you can grab. We've got a green arrow pointing to them there. You could just drag and drop those to your desktop. Those are little ones, a data sheet and more information about this viewing technology. And then, like I said, during the Q&A, we'll have actually have audio, so we can have a more interactive. That's the goal of this session, to make it more interactive. So the agenda is going to be first a technology introduction. What is this new technology? We're going to go into a little demonstration of the viewer, of the HTML5 viewer. We'll have a Q&A. We're going to drill down into the implementation of the product, show you all the resources that are available so that for the evaluation program, and then we're going to have a final Q&A session and some closing remarks. On the background, just to give everyone an even background here on this new technology, CGM, the computer graphics meta file, is controlled or maintained by the CGM Open Foundation. Was originally developed by ISO, and it's a standard for vector and raster graphics. It's been around since 1987. And then HTML5, the new version of the hypertext markup language, which is a cornerstone of the W3C's new open web platform. And then the third key item that we're going to give you some background on is the WebGL library. And this is a JavaScript, and this is also part of HTML5, but we're going to focus on it because it's key. It's the JavaScript API for rendering 3D and 2D graphics in any compatible web browser without the use of a plugin. So a little more on HTML5. We hear a lot about it nowadays. It's a new thing. It's pretty powerful. It's a core technology for presenting, for structuring and presenting intelligent graphics and intelligent web applications on the World Wide Web. Again, it's non-owned, non-proprietary. It was developed by W3C in consortium with a number of technology companies. HTML5 adds many new features, including video, audio, canvas elements for low-level graphics, SVG graphics, and other things which we'll elaborate on. The new features are primarily designed to enable multimedia delivery in a browser without plugins. It's device independent, which means it can work on a broad range of devices: PCs, smartphones, tablets, Macs, anything that has a HTML5 browser. But the technology is designed to have a broad support and bring to developers that dream of true cross-platform independence. It also introduces several new programming interfaces or APIs for complex web applications. And one of them is WebGL. WebGL is a JavaScript API for rendering 2D and 3D graphics. And WebGL was actually is based on the OpenGL standard, or OpenGL ES, which has become available on almost everything, and is really the preferred language for graphics and all the mobile devices. But the WebGL was actually designed by another organization called Kronos, which is a big, well-founded organization founded by Apple, Intel, NVIDIA, Microsoft, Adobe. Anybody that has anything to do with graphics is in the Kronos group. So the Kronos group actually took the OpenGL programming interface and made a WebGL JavaScript interface so it can be used in web applications. It's completely integrated into all the web standards. It permits GPU acceleration, so it allows very good graphics. It's become very popular with game developers because you can do wonderful graphic applications with it. No plugin, again, no plugins required in any compatible browser. And on that note, WebGL is widely supported in all of the browsers. And I've shown the icons below for all the popular browsers, you know, all the way from Internet Explorer, Microsoft's Internet Explorer, and Chrome, and Firefox, Safari on all the Apple devices, and even Opera. And there may be some others that are not so widely known, but it's pretty widely supported. So what about a new technology alternative to ActiveX? We hear a lot about ActiveX these days. ActiveX, some of the most widely discussed weaknesses of ActiveX is that it has to be installed in each target computer. On each computer that's going to view a CGM has to have a copy. Sometimes that's done in advance of viewing, sometimes it's done on demand, but it can be quite problematic. And also ActiveX has been strongly criticized for security problems. Some of the more well-known security problems have been with, like, the Flash plugin. There was a notorious case where there was a rogue Flash plugin for Chrome that got circulated and created lots and lots of problems. So ActiveX is full of security holes. Also, there's the issue of ActiveX browser support by Microsoft. Microsoft has announced in Windows 10 with the new Microsoft Edge browser that they're dropping support for ActiveX altogether. Now there will be a version on Windows 10 of IE 11 for legacy applications, but we can see the handwriting on the wall there that Microsoft has officially dropped the support for it. It is encouraging everyone to move to their new browser. And then there's Chrome and Firefox. They do support ActiveX in a form. It's not exactly ActiveX, but it's a plug-in technology. It's very similar to ActiveX. It's still in the Chrome and Firefox browsers, but it's real uncertain as to the future of that in those browsers too. So let's go to a little demo here of the VizEx View HTML5 viewer. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with Chrome. And this CGM, a fairly straightforward, typical technical illustration. We've got a toolbar at the top, just like you have in plugin viewers. You have a toolbar. We can show hotspots. we can see that it's got tooltips, just like the other browsers. You can zoom, and you can pan, and it's hard to tell that it's not an ActiveX plugin CGM viewer, because it's, as you can see, it's quite responsive. Now, just to show in another browser, like here's IE, and I've already got it loaded here just for demo purposes, but again, this is in, you can tell see the IE button up there, so this is IE, and again, you can pan it, control it through the toolbar. The mouse wheel is hooked up to zoom in and out. So that's the same file in two different browsers. So now that's a pretty simple one. Let's pull up one a little bit more complex, or quite a bit more complex, and see how we do. Okay, so there's a nice, more complex one. Let's zoom in. Let's pan it. And we can zoom with the mouse wheel. So anyway, that's the two browsers. Let me show you a little bit more of the capabilities of this is another, and by the way, all these examples are available on our evaluation page, which we'll talk about more, but here's a little more advanced example. This one has got, this is like kind of mocking up a parts catalog where you're having a list of assemblies. So I'm going to click there, click over here to load an assembly or a CGM into the view, and then we can see we got hotspots here again. Now this particular demo was using events. We've got some on-click processors there, so we can navigate between CGMs. Again, you can see all the hotspots. Yeah, there's the hotspots. This one is kind of a large drawing, so let's zoom a little bit. So there we're loading, and these just a side note here, these are actually coming from a website, or from our website. So when I'm clicking on a CGM here, it's not coming off my workstation. It's actually going over the public internet to our website and downloading that CGM. So you can see it's pretty responsive. So that's the demo part. Let's go back to our presentation, and we're going to so now we're going to drill down a little bit more about how it works. Up here I've got a system diagram, or a network diagram, just kind of giving an idea of how it works in a typical scenario. On the left here we've got a bunch of clients. These clients can be like Windows, Linux, Mac, desktops, anything that's got an HTML5 browser. It can be tablets, Android, iOS, Windows tablets. So you've got all these clients. They're connected to a public or a private network. They're connected to a server, and there's two key things here in the server, and it could be in a real live environment. These could be mini servers, but one of the key elements in this network diagram is the code server. Now the HTML5 viewer is actually a JavaScript library, and that's the actual name there, and that's on a server. So the first time you try to view a CGM in a browser, It's going to go across the network and it's going to download that JavaScript file into your browser and keep it in browser cache. And so that's what happens initially when you're viewing a CGM. Now, once you get it loaded, then you've got to get documents from somewhere, and there, of course, will be a document server that'll hold your HTMLs, the CGMs that are, and other images too, like, and also, by the way, this also will read and display TIFF files too. But there could be other images, like images that are used to make a toolbar or part of your application. So that's a kind of a typical scenario of how this would be used. And of course, the key here again is code's located on your server. When it's needed, it's downloaded into the respective browsers. No installation. I mean, literally, the installation happens in seconds the first time, and then you're good to go for viewing CGMs. Now, getting started with it, I mentioned we have an evaluation program, and that's really the essence of that is we have set up an evaluation page, which I'm going to walk you through all the resources that's available there. But we have there a getting started document, kind of give you a quick overview. We've got the full API documentation and lots of live examples that you can play with and look at the code. So let's take a look at those. This is our evaluation page, and like I said, we have the overview here. That's a PDF file you can just download, and it gives you a quick overview of the technology, a quick code sample, an annotated code sample, how to load a CGM in a browser with the VizEx View HTML5, the files that you'll need for deployment, a bit of background on migrating from a Viz to the new technology from an ActiveX control, and I'll get into more detail on that. And then a bit about the toolbar there and how you can modify it. So back to our evaluation page, and then we also have the full documentation on the API, and it starts with there kind of a description of how to incorporate the viewer, really the essential elements that you'll need to set up viewing, and then the full API. The top level API is called WebCGM document, and so you can see all the API functions there that are documented, and hyperlinks so you can browse, and so lots of good information there too. And then there's some examples. The first example is just a real simple how to load a CGM in a page, and I'll just show you that quickly here. And once you get them in, you can actually view the page source. So you can actually see the demo, look at the page source. That's all it took right there. That's all the code it took to load that CGM in a page. So, and then we've got this basic file viewer, and that's the one I used in my demo to show you, and it allows you to open files from either from your local station or from a URL. And then a more elaborate example, that's the illustrated parts assembly with the linking examples and events. And then we've also got the WebCGM 2.0 test suite. And now this was, just a little background here, this test suite was developed by CGM Open. It was originally developed for ActiveX controls, but we've modified all of the tests slightly to work with the HTML5 viewer. And they're a very simple tests. They're what we call unit testing. In other words, they're kind of testing one feature of the API. So, but they can be useful. in sometimes trying to figure out. One of the best ones that I like is this object behaviors that shows you how to use, like how to do object highlighting, and anyway, it's kind of hard to see, but actually it's manipulating the objects in a browser, and so it's a, it can be useful when you're implementing and trying out to figure out how to do things. And then we post the updates here too to keep you posted when we put up new versions and what was changed. So that's the evaluation page. That's the resources that you got to work with. This is hosted on our website. So when you're loading the viewer, it's going to be a little slower than it would be in your environment because you're actually going to our website and downloading it. So now one thing I want to spend just a little bit of time on here is the migrating, what the essence of migrating from an ActiveX control to HTML5 means in your code. If you've had code that's been using an ActiveX control, somewhere in there you have an object tag. Oops. And an object tag, or an object element is how you actually load an ActiveX control. When that's encountered in a browser, that would load the ActiveX control into memory. So you're going to see, you've probably got something like this. Now, in web applications, a lot of times that's generated dynamically. The object tag is generated dynamically, to be able to switch out CGMs. But that's the essence of what like this would actually load a CGM into the browser view. Now here's the same thing in HTML5 code with our VizEx View HTML5 viewer. And you can see the important differences here. Here's the canvas tag, and that's how it all starts. That's how you get WebGL. How you access WebGL is with a canvas element. And then this script statement below it, that's what actually, that's what will load the CGM, this one here, and then this script actually loads the library. And this is important here because it has to point to the location. This location here is pointing to our website where we've got the viewer, but when it's actually deployed, you're going to be pointing to your server. So that's kind of the essence of the difference between the ActiveX control. Now there's some other differences. If you've been working with an ActiveX control that doesn't have the standard web CGM API, then there will be some API differences, of course, but I think it's going to be fairly easy to move. And if you are on a web CGM compatible ActiveX control, it's going to be even easier. You'll find it pretty simple to migrate. Now one other thing I wanted to just elaborate on was you notice that there's a toolbar in our example. Let's see, going back to that example. Okay, so here's the toolbar at the top, and I wanted to show you how it's actually, that's just something as part of the demo. It can be completely modified. And this is what the code looks like to set up a toolbar. It's a div with an ID on it, and it could be any ID, but I've just, in our example there, we call it the toolbar ID. Now you'll see all these images, tags that each image is one icon on the toolbar. And for instance, let's take the open icon here. You have the source for the image there. You have an on-click that connects that open to the code to actually prompt for a file name, and then a title for a tooltip. Now the next one here is, this one here is controls a scaling option. and the on-click you can see is connected to get web CGM document set mapping, and that's how, through our API, how you control the mapping of the CGM to the window that you've set up. So these are actually API functions in our VizEx HTML5 viewer. So on that get web CGM document is at top level. So this is just one way to do a toolbar. I mean, you could even use HTML5 buttons in it to dynamically create your own toolbar. You could position it anywhere you want. So it's completely customizable. So that now takes us to the Q&A. We're going to see, Dave's going to help us out with that.
Hi. Morning, everybody. Hi, Dan. Yeah, we've got some questions. Nobody's raised their hand yet, so if you do want to ask a question live, then please just raise your hand and we'll open your microphone up. But we've got a question here, Don, around security. So I think you've explained it pretty well, but just to clarify, where did the CGM files, if we're going to do the evaluation, where would they reside? Are they going onto your server, or do they stay locally?
Well, they would stay locally. In other words, we don't upload. There's nothing. None of the data has to be uploaded for viewing. If it's a local file, it would come off your workstation or off your local network. If you're addressing it through a URL, it would be wherever you're pointing to, wherever the developer is pointing to. So no security issues for those of you that are working with sensitive data and you want to try it out with the viewer. You're secure there.
Yeah, that's always a concern, is the security of the data, really. So yeah, it stays locally, as you say, so there's no risk of you losing your files. Another question is the solution cloud-based only?
Well, you could say, I mean, it's certainly compatible with a cloud, but it doesn't have to be run in the cloud. Now, our demo, the way we staged the evaluation version of this, that's a cloud, that could be classified as a cloud solution, and it's certainly compatible with that. But it's not necessarily. Everything can be run locally.
Yes, I suppose that leads us to another question: is can you run it standalone? So could it reside on a disconnected environment? That's probably a bit more.
Right. Yeah. Well, now that's more like equivalent to DVD, running off DVDs or offline browsing, some call it. Yes, it can run that way. I mean, and what you would do is put all the files locally on either your CGM files would be on a DVD, and you would have to load the browser off that DVD too. But you can use what's known as the HTML5 manifest and list the files that you need to keep resident and cache in the browser, and so you could run it offline like that totally.
Yeah, I used to be involved with a IETM, or an Interactive Electronic Technical Manual, so that was always one of the scenarios that we usually had to fulfill with the customer, that they could get to their files in a disconnected environment. And the final question I have here is around the CGM format itself. Does it support, you've probably just shown us CGM4s there, but does it support all versions of CGM, legacy ones as well?
Yes, it does. It supports all the way back through web version 1, all the way up through version 4.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty much any CGM, and even some proprietary CGM. There was a format called ActiveCGM that we can support to some extent too, which was kind of an earlier flavor of WebCGM. But yeah, it's really good at CGM support.
Okay, so just a final thought is that you obviously still have your own technology for ActiveX. So do you see this replacing that eventually? Um,
Well, I think there's times when the ActiveX is appropriate. Now, one place we've seen it used where it can be used is like in C#. Microsoft's in Microsoft Visual Studio and C# applications, you can use ActiveX controls locally on a workstation for, like for instance, in an XML editor, and you needed to be able to show CGMs in an XML editor. That would be a good case for the ActiveX control. Still works good. It's fast. You have to install some proprietary software there anyway, so installation is not a problem. So there are some cases where it still works good. I mean, it works very good, but I can see scenarios where that ActiveX might still be a better solution.
Okay, I've got another question. What are the ways to improve performance on mobile devices? I'm assuming this is somebody who's already evaluating the product, because he's then said, I tried the demo on my tablet and it seemed to take a long time to render the image. So
Yeah, I'd be interested to know which tablet. We're experimenting with, like on an iPad 3, we found it's pretty responsive. Some of the issues are the touch, how to get still experimenting with a good way to get the zoom functions and how you implement the equivalent of mouse. I've noticed the performance on iPad 3 seems to be good. Now the Androids don't have quite as much experience with. We'll always be looking. I think I think we've got the wind in our back here with that, because I think that all these devices are improving on their GPU implementation of WebGL. So I expect to see that get better and better as all the chip manufacturers implement WebGL in their GPUs. But we would be interested to know if you have a device that we find slow, we'd like to run some tests here too. So we'll maybe shoot us an email with which device you're using, and then we'll try to drill down and get some better insight into that.
okay, and do hotspots work on touch devices? And again, I'm assuming tablets or phones.
Sure, they do. Yeah, they're fully compatible or fully supported.
Okay. So yeah, I think there are so many devices out there, as we all know, like tablets and phones now, so difficult to test on all of them. So it'd be good from this is what the evaluation program and so forth is about. So it'd be good to get some feedback from obviously people involved.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think
Okay.
that's it for the questions. Thanks everybody. That was really good. So I'm going to hand you back to Don just to close up it, unless we have some more questions in the meantime.
So anyway, just to wrap up here, the benefits of the new technology are significant. It has full CGM support. It's fast, quality rendering, no plugins required, no software installation required, making it easily accessible. The toolbar is configurable, and it's compliant with all of the CGM standards and CGM profiles. So again, we have an evaluation program. It gives you access to our product developers who should actually develop this product, and assistance with implementation. It's nice if you have a real-life application that you can apply it to for a proof of concept. But even if you just want to just kick some tires and we welcome any product feedback, of course. So we think that the new technology will change the way the CGM files are displayed on the web and in interactive electronic technical publications. ActiveX plugin issues will be eliminated. IT departments will be your friend. So join us in becoming part of the evolution of the CGM viewing. Thank you for attending. There's some information about upcoming events, and so that does it for today. So thank you all very much for attending.